Hi, my name is Dalaina Smith, and this is my EDL 854 Module 16 case study. So recapping this particular scenario, we have a school district who is seeing changes in the socioeconomic status of the district population over the past few years. However, they continue to maintain a great deal of parent support and involvement. So Mr. Stevens, who is currently the principal at George Washington Middle School, has numerous duties and is the only administrator. So because of the parent involvement, he relies heavily on organizations such as the Booster Club and the PTA to help support events that are hosted by the school district. These parents are then placed in different locations to run the gate, as well as help with the concessions. Typically, there are 4 parents that are involved in every event. Since there's parent involvement, he has put in place various safeguards to help ensure that funds are secured at all times. For instance, at the concession stand, there is a product inventory done before and after, which helps to make sure that the funds match up with items that have been sold. And at the gate, the tickets are numbered. So what we've ran into is, in this particular case, there's an individual who comes up to him and is explaining it was payday, and he even had to pay with a $50 bill to get in at the gate. So later that evening, when the principal is counting the funds to make sure that everything matches up, which he does in the presence of the security guard to ensure he's not alone with the funds, he notices that $50 bill is not in the monies that are counted. So Ms. Bowman is the parent volunteer who happens to be the one who had been responsible for the funds in that bag that is missing the $50 bill that Mr. Stevens feels should be there. She had made note that tickets 78 through 88 were torn, and so they had to be discarded. Now, because of this, she is short funds for those tickets that were missing. However, prior to this occurrence, Mr. Stevens also knows that him and Ms. Bowman had a prior disagreement. Ms. Bowman's daughter, who is a cheerleader for the middle school, has been given an opportunity to go to New York and represent herself and cheerleaders, and Ms. Bowman was going to present that to the PTA to ask for expenses to be covered. However, Mr. Stevens said that he could not stand behind that and support that request. So there is probably some underlying tension there. However, the case study does not go into detail about any particular falling out that may have occurred after this. Again, there's inventory as well as number of tickets to ensure that monies are handled appropriately, and that security guard is with Mr. Stevens from the time that he collects those bags of money or boxes of money until he makes the nightly deposit. So a couple of questions, things that we would probably still need to find out. My first question would be, what's done with the discarded tickets? Is there a protocol in place? If so, was that protocol followed? I would hope that there was some way that these tickets were then set aside so that they could further be accounted for. My next question would be, how many tickets were actually damaged? And does the amount shorted match the number of tickets that were discarded? So it states that there were 10 tickets that were damaged. However, it also states that tickets 78 through 88 were damaged. So if it was 78 through 88, that actually would have been 11 tickets that were damaged. So if so, then the funds for the night should have been short $55. So whether or not one was correct or the other, I would want to make sure that the missing money and the number of tickets that had to be discarded equaled each other. I would also question, were there any larger bills in the money? Is it possible that the 50 was given as change, for instance, for a $100 bill? Also, is it possible that maybe this was given in trade? Maybe somebody came up and said, do you happen to have any larger bills, and traded it out? I know that's one thing, being the treasurer for some of our parent organizations. I've seen many parents who want to trade out their money for a larger bill or smaller bills. And so again, are there any protocols in place that would prevent or discourage that from happening? Are there cameras in place that could have monitored to see whether or not the funds were used appropriately, or if something out of the ordinary may have occurred? And then, are there procedures or protocols in place for instances such as this already, or is this something that his hands are somewhat tied because there is no protocol outlined, and so he has to forge the way for how the scenario will be handled. So looking at the different problems that need to be addressed, I think the first one is that the current procedures in place, are they appropriate? Do they need to be revised for damaged tickets? If a ticket needs to be discarded, does that mean that it's completely done away with, or what is the procedure for accounting for those damaged tickets? Again, that amount of money short and the number of tickets discarded, we need to clarify and identify how that's going to be handled and ensure that those numbers match up. We need to address the security of all funds obtained during any kind of event. And then we also have to look at the possible uprising of an issue between the trust, between the school, as well as these parent organizations, So my proposed plan of action would begin by meeting with Mrs. Bowman. I would want to clarify the number of tickets that were discarded and what was done with the damaged tickets, whether or not it was 10 or was it really the 78 through 88, which would then be 11 tickets. When the tickets were determined to be damaged, what did she then do with them? Did she set those to the side and keep those possibly with the tickets and turn those in to where we could verify that? Or does she claim to have thrown them away? Or what does she claim happened with those tickets at that point? And then we would want to review the process for dealing with damaged tickets. Especially if this has been revised, we would want to enlighten her on what the future process is going to be and just ensure that she's knowledgeable about how the district would then want her to handle these situations in the future. The second thing would be revising that procedure for damaged tickets. We want to make sure that whatever the current process is, we sit down, we look at that. Is it sufficient or does it need to be revised? We would want to ensure that the protocol requires those tickets to be maintained, so then we have that extra step of accountability at the end of the night when we compare that with the funds. And then finally, I would want to meet with the parent volunteers as a whole to ensure that they understand those protocols and responsibilities as they are serving as these volunteers. We would greatly appreciate their efforts and their help to fill this need within the school. However, there needs to be some accountability. So when the parents are volunteering to assist with these events, we would want to make sure that we appropriately train them on the expectations, and then we would want to make sure that they understand they're knowledgeable and accountable then. I would also work with the other district administrators to possibly draft an agreement, a code of conduct per se, that those who were trained would then sign that, and we would have that on file so that there was some more accountability and possibly a procedure that would then follow if there were discrepancies. So to ensure that we're promoting the success of all students, we want to make sure that all activity funds are used to support the students in a variety of ways. We know that any type of irresponsible management of this money takes away from those opportunities that students can then participate in. We would also want to create an environment of integrity and responsibility so that that is the same expectation that we have for our students is then displayed for all of those that are working with the school. And similarly, without supporting evidence, we would want to be incredibly cautious of placing accusations on individuals, and we would want to make sure that accusations are not treated as facts without supporting evidence. So recapping the thinking, feeling, and valuing throughout this process, the first thing was that 78 to 88 is 11 tickets. So if the money was only shorted $50, then that would not account for the 55 that it should have been shorted for the 11 tickets. However, is it possible that somebody accidentally overpaid or possibly made an additional donation? Also thinking about what damage a wrong accusation could cause within the community as well as the school. I'm feeling like there's too many other options to just initially accuse Ms. Bowman of mishandling the funds, and also feeling like there should be something in place for handling the damaged tickets. I kind of feel like possibly the district has created this loophole that could have led to possible misuse of funds. And then valuing the opportunities created through these events to raise funds for students, as well as the integrity of the school and all the stakeholders. And there also needs to be precise procedures and protocols in place to ensure that this is handled in the most appropriate manner in the future. A couple of unresolved issues. First of all, there isn't any concrete evidence that the money was misused. Until those tickets can be accounted for one way or another, we have no proof that the money was actually taken and not truly just shorted because those tickets had to be discarded. I also feel like we need to resolve the issue of what is the process for handling this. Since these are not school employees, it then creates a different situation for handling misuse of funds. So whether or not there is already a process in place or one needs to be established, I feel like that needs to be resolved. And then finally, I feel like this is a great opportunity for the school to step back and look at the use of parent volunteers versus school employees. The accountability between the two different groups is completely different. So maybe this is an opportunity to say it would be valuable for this school to look at what it would cost to ensure that we have school employees that are actually carrying out these duties. So looking at the academic success and personal well-being of all that are involved, we want to make sure that administration is creating an effective and efficient management of the school. So we want to make sure that we continue to use that inventory system as well as the number of tickets, which helps to create that sense of accountability for all of those that are touching the funds, as well as the administrator who is then counting the money at the end of the night. I loved that there was the use of the security guard to provide that second set of eyes so that the money is never alone with any one individual. And then finally, we want to make sure that that inventory and ticket numbers are then used to compare funds to ensure that accountability. And I feel like really going along with this is that follow-up procedure for if there's discrepancy, how is that handled? Looking at the social learning for every student, we want to make sure that there are expectations in place for the proper use of funds because we know this is what provides those opportunities for all of our students. Also, we want to make sure that funds that are used and raised are used to support the students as a whole. And that should be an expectation that is clearly communicated to all of those involved in these organizations. And then finally creating an environment of integrity so that that's established not only for the students but also for any stakeholders that are involved in the school. And we want to make sure that every individual is also respected and that the truth is sought out and not accusations thrown around and individuals hurt in the process. And then finally, looking at the academic learning, I think it's important to investigate this further and determine what truly happened with the funds. However, that should not hinder the learning of any of the students, which then includes Ms. Bowman's daughter. So we know if accusations are thrown out too early without credible facts, that this could greatly hinder her learning experience. And we know that the funds, which are used to further increase these learning opportunities, are highly valued. So we want to make sure that we do our best to get to the bottom of what actually occurred, and we want to make sure that we are not taking any of those funds away from those student opportunities. And this presents a great opportunity to share that opportunity to problem solve and think outside of the box and work to prevent all possible scenarios that could arise. So I feel like this is an opportunity for our staff to come together and look at ways to further secure this system and ensure that we are presenting the best opportunities for all of our students and all of our stakeholders. Thank you.